Meanwhile, on the other side of Europe, workers in Greece went on strike Wednesday to protest another round of spending cuts under consideration by the Greek government. Public employees, teachers, medics, lawyers, and even banksters walked off their jobs and took to the streets to protest salary and pension cuts. It's the first such strike since the new conservative government took power in June. Yet despite the mass demonstrations, the Greek government today unveiled another new austerity budget, this time pledging to cut $11.5 billion over the next 2 years. So what will this latest round of cuts do to a nation already collapsing under the banksters' demands? Here for an answer to that is Richard Wolff, economist and visiting professor in the Graduate Program for International Affairs at New School University, New York City, and author of numerous books, including the brilliant Occupy the Economy, Challenging Capitalism. Richard, welcome back.
Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you for joining us. Looking at Greece and now Spain, is this what collapse looks like?
I think we're getting there. I think what we see is the rising of the mass of people, and I mean that, who have said, we have enough. We have suffered now for 5 years of this crisis. We have suffered government bailout programs that help the banks and big corporations who are mostly responsible for the crisis. We've watched the government borrow way too much money to save the banks and not to save us. And now they want us, the people, to suffer an austerity, cut programs, cut employment, and use the money instead to pay back the very banks they bailed out. It's too much. And I think the Greek people have voted in two ways. First, the two elections this year, when the two parties that used to dominate Greek politics together got barely a third of the vote, so that the majority of Greeks voted against all of this austerity. And now we're seeing, because that didn't solve their problem, the next step, which is going into the streets, having a general strike on Wednesday of this week, and beginning to say to the elite in Greece and to the rest of Europe, we will not be made to pay the stupendous costs of a crisis we didn't cause and of government programs you imposed that failed to solve it. You can't put it on us.
Given how obvious the failure of austerity is, and we've seen it here in the United States, just red state versus blue states, we're certainly seeing it in Greece, now in Spain, in Ireland, and in Portugal, country after country. No country in history ever cut their way to prosperity. Why is it that the banksters and the technocrats keep pushing this? What possible endgame is worth this much human suffering and the possible destabilization of entire nations, or for that matter, the entire European Union?
Because they don't see it that way. For them, they have had, quote unquote, stability, hegemony, dominance since the Second World War. They simply assume it. So for them, the problem is, who pays for this capitalist catastrophe? Either the bankers, the rich, those who have done real well, or the mass of people. And their reaction is, not us. You've got to honor the loans we gave you. You can never tax us. You can never go after our wealth to solve these problems. You have to take it out of the mass of people. And you know, the irony is, when you look back at the history of empires, it has been that narrowness, that blindness to the larger picture, that absorbed self-interest that has been the final end to those empires. Seems so strange to people who look back. But when you're in the middle of it, that's what they're doing. If the masses don't pay, they will have to pay, and they don't want it.
It's almost like Tsar Nicholas or
exactly.
You know, what's her name in France, Marie Antoinette? Is that what you're suggesting?
Right, or Kaiser Wilhelm in Germany. They kept pushing, even when their advisors began saying to them, if you keep pushing, it'll be all over.
Right.
But rather than dip into the wealth of the country, and the same is true here in the United States, they keep pushing until the people push back.
Well, and Richard, in the just a half a minute we have left, what's the lesson for the United States in this?
The lesson is it can happen here. It's naive to imagine that the same process, the same crisis, the same bailout program, help the top, hope it trickles down, pretend it doesn't matter when it doesn't, That pushing on the mass of the people, which will resume here right after the election, is going to provoke the American people just as it has the Greek, the Spanish, the Italians, the Portuguese, and so on.
Very, very quickly, do you think there's any chance if Obama is reelected and there's a Democratic majority in Congress that we might see an FDR direction rather than a austerity direction?
Not until there's a mass upheaval. It was the unions, the CIO, the socialists, the communists in America who forced it from below.
Yeah.
Until we have a renewed Occupy Wall Street or some equivalent, the pressure won't be there, and there's no indication from the Obama administration that they would react to anything other than real pressure from below. So that's the question.
I think you're absolutely right. Richard Wolff, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you again for inviting me.
We'll be right back.